welcome to No Broken Legs. I am your host, Evan Belfiore, and joining me to break down the second week of the NFL playoffs and talk a little Browns while we're at it is Jimmy Champ. Jimmy, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. We've had some crazy weather here in Northeast Ohio the last couple days, but hopefully we can get through these playoff games and maybe start and finish the weekend strong this week.
Yeah, I was 2-0 last Saturday, and then things kind of fell apart from there. Tampa Bay really shat the bed. That killed me, man. I had them in a couple of teases because I thought they were going to win, but it looks like Tom Brady will be moving on from Tampa Bay. And I have a bit of wisdom for those of you out there that doesn't just apply to Dallas. We'll talk about a couple of teams that this could apply to, but in round 2, there is a very steadfast rule. Do not overvalue teams that look awesome in the first weekend of the playoffs. It has bitten bettors in the ass more than once.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, you figure that first weekend of the playoffs, you've got some teams that just squeaked in, maybe weren't as strong as competition, and you had that week of rest for a couple teams to get healthy, and teams get a good look. You get a little bit of playoff football on tape. So yeah, don't just go off what you saw last week, and don't forget the rest of the season that happened before that playoff game.
So the playoff matchups this week start with Kansas City hosting the Jacksonville Jaguars, coming off their just dramatic come-from-behind victory. We told you they were going to win, and they did. They didn't make it pretty, but they did win.
Doesn't matter how they got there. They got there.
Their reward is a trip to Arrowhead to be 9-point underdogs. The over-under here is 53, minus 460 for Kansas City, plus 375 for Jacksonville. I think Kansas City's going to cover this spread, Jimmy. I don't think Jacksonville has much of a chance in this game. How much of a chance do you give them?
Yeah, so I'm going to take everything I made on Jacksonville's money line last week, and now we're going to put it all on the Chiefs to win this game by 2 touchdowns. There were a lot of really close, good games that first weekend. I think you're going to see a little bit of separation in a couple of the games this weekend, this being one of them. I think Kansas City is going to rout Jacksonville. You won't get to throw 4 interceptions against the Chiefs and have a chance to come back. Like, it'll be game over. Like, Trevor Lawrence hasn't really looked good for a whole game in about a month and a half, and I think their awesome playoff run that you called months and months ago, their awesome playoff run now comes to an end, which is okay. Trevor's gotten there now. He's gotten a taste of it. They've got a little bit of work to do, but I just loved the way the Chiefs were playing at the end of the year, and I think they're going to go nuts in this first playoff game.
For those of you that doubt Kansas City in this game, I would say go back and look at Kansas City the last few years in the second round and Andy Reid going all the way back to Philadelphia. His teams always play well after byes. They're even better after byes in the playoffs. And this is where Kansas City is an elite team. Jacksonville is not yet an elite team. We'll find out how close they are in this game, but I just don't think they have the horses to run with what Kansas City is going to bring. When we talk about the Browns, I talk a lot about how they don't seem to understand the intensity level for those biggest moments in the games. I think that's what we're going to see in this game, is Jacksonville maybe getting a little shell-shocked. I'm not confident enough in the 8.5 to bet it. I'm going to tease this down because that's just Doug Peterson respect, man. I think he's a really good coach. On the other hand, they got an onside kick, and Kansas City turned the ball over to Jacksonville a couple of times in the game they played earlier this year, and Kansas City still beat them by 10. So,
yeah, I mean, I'm really, for myself personally, I'm not afraid of this spread. I really think the Chiefs are going to dominate this football game. I do imagine Jacksonville will try to exploit the less playoff experienced corners that Kansas City is going to have on the field, but I just really don't think it's going to matter now that the Chiefs have found some semblance of a run game to go with the new kind of death by 1,000 cuts passing attack. And I think you'll see Patrick Mahomes play mistake-free football. He knows the mistakes he's made in close games this year, and I think he'll get rid of those. I still think he's the best quarterback in the NFL, and I think you're going to see that separation here, as we saw Burrow and Allen both not look great in their first playoff game of the season. I think it'll be the complete opposite for Mahomes. I think he's going to carve Jacksonville up.
Yeah, I like a lot of the Mahomes props. Just kind of get what you can get out there. He's probably going to go for 300 and at least 2 touchdowns. I also really like Travis Kelce props.
There
this
it
dude
is.
Just eats in the playoffs. when they got to get drives, they got to get first downs, they're going to look to Kelsey. He's going to get fed because he's a beast and you can't guard him. He's just such a weapon.
Yeah, I agree. Also, if you can find any player props on Jerick McKinnon touchdowns, I am going to be betting Jerick McKinnon touchdowns because now all Jerick McKinnon does is score touchdowns.
And especially in the playoffs, he's the safety valve, and teams are going to scheme to take away the top line targets, and McKinnon's just right there to clean up whatever's there to be cleaned up.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we both like Kansas City. I'll be putting them in a bunch of teases because I think they're going to win. Maybe Jacksonville backdoor covers this, but I think Kansas City wins this probably pretty easily.
Yeah, I was just about to ask because you've been on these really well this year. What do you think about the over-under?
Oh, man. 53 is a lot. Kansas City's defense isn't great, but I could also see Kansas City being up 28-14 at one point. Maybe 31-14. Now, all of a sudden, you're right in there in a touchdown, even a late touchdown, you don't get a cover, but you do get the over hitting. 31-21 would be 52.
It feels like a lot of points.
It does feel like a lot of points, but now that I'm thinking about it, I feel like Kansas City's putting at least 4 touchdowns on the board.
I agree.
And that's already 28. And I feel like they're going to go higher than that. I think they get in the mid-30s, which means Jacksonville's only got to get to 20. Man, that's a lot of points. That's a lot of points.
I'm doing it. I like the over. Let's go.
I'm trying to not talk myself into it because I always talk about this whole season I did so well on over-unders because I remembered the mantra. Unders hit way more frequently than overs because of how the public bets. People just bet it that way. So if you just take unders, you'll generally make money. But this is a game where I could see Kansas City, I could see 40 points at halftime. This could be
100%.
This could be a 28-14 game at halftime. So you know what? I talked myself into the over. All right. So we both like Kansas City to cover. We both like Kansas City in any teases or parlays you want to do. You like them at plus 14 to try and make a little extra.
I do.
I'm not going to be making that bet, but I don't think that is an unwise move. We both like Mahomes props and Travis Kelce. Get them while they're hot. NTN will probably score a touchdown, although he didn't last week. Mm-hmm. Other than that, I don't know what to think of what Jacksonville's going to do because it seems like a game where Chris Jones is going to make a couple of big plays, which is also why I like the over. I think he's going to cause a turnover or two, and giving Kansas City a short field in the playoffs is not a recipe for success.
Yeah, I like that. I do think, kudos to Jacksonville. They kind of went out and got, I think they overpaid for them, but they went out and got free agent wide receivers who are good. Not great. I think they're good, but not quite great. I think they overpaid a little bit, but without Zay Jones, Christian Kirk, and Evan Ingram, you don't win that game last week. So did you overpay? It got you a playoff win. So I would imagine, but I agree with you. I think Kansas City will be bringing the pass rush. So I'll probably looking at prop bets for Evan Ingram catches because I could see him being the safety valve on that side, just like McKinnon will be on the other.
Yeah. Well, let's take a look at our Saturday night game. It is the Philadelphia Eagles hosting the New York Giants. The Eagles are 7.5-point favorites. The over-under is 48, plus 290 for the Giants, minus 360 for Philadelphia. Man, Brian Daboll can coach, man, and the Minnesota Vikings have a really bad defense. They fired their defensive coordinator after a really piss-poor effort against Daniel Jones. They just refused to try to contain Daniel Jones in the pocket. They gave him all sorts of running room on the edge. We can't possibly expect Philadelphia to be surprised by the fact that Daniel Jones runs the football. And they're going to approach this game much differently than Minnesota, won't they?
Yeah, you don't have to be worried about Daniel Jones running the ball if you don't let Daniel Jones run the ball. And I believe that's what Philadelphia is going to do. See, to me, this is one of those games that you were talking about earlier. Do not overvalue this Giants team because it's a sweet story. Oh, Danny Dimes. Oh, Saquon, blah, blah, blah. You beat Kirk Cousins, who has to lose in the playoffs. You son of a bitch.
They couldn't even win this game, and it's not to dwell on last week's game, but Kirk Cousins had the most bullshit great stat line for a football game I think I've ever seen. Like, that motherfucker made plays consistently throughout the second half that didn't hurt his box score, but were just killers for the team.
Yeah, and there's just no excuse for the throw he made at the end.
No, God, no.
But don't. But like I said, I just don't overvalue the Giants based on that performance. We know who the Giants are. I believe with healthy Jalen Hurts, I know who the Eagles are. So all my money's on the Eagles in this game. I think this game's gonna be like wrapped at halftime. Personally, wow. I think they're gonna run blitz. They're gonna keep Daniel Jones in the pocket, and then I think it's over. Like, I think the Eagles defense is so much better than the Giants offense. I really truthfully believe that. I think it's sadly a horrible matchup for the Giants. I think their amazing season comes to an end here, and the Eagles are going to move on for a date with, we'll talk about that in a minute.
Man, I really want to love Philadelphia in this game. I do think they win. I'm going to put them in a bunch of parlays. I think that this Giants team is mostly smoke and mirrors, but I think they're effective at doing the smoke and mirrors thing, and I think they can ugly this game up because they know what to expect from Philadelphia. But I am definitely not ruling out the possibility that Philadelphia makes this a wrap early. And that's because I don't know what the Giants offense is going to be able to do if Daniel Jones is not out there running for 5 to 10 yards a pop to get first downs. Because Philadelphia is not just going to say, here's 15 yards of open turf in all directions on 3rd and 7, like the Minnesota team was doing. And what does this Giants offense look like without that? And I know the Giants are going to gang up to try to stop the run on Philadelphia, but with those receivers they got out there, man, Philadelphia's going to find a way to run play action and go deep on you, and that's like they just hit those with A.J. Brown all the time because he's a beast.
Well, all my prop bets for the Eagles are going to be on A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. So please, New York, please stop the run. Pretty please.
I'm just going to be looking at Hurts props because, oh man, now I probably am talking myself into throwing a little action at the receivers. I had Miles Sanders this year. He's very up and down, as is the tight end, Goddard. But this is the type of game that I would expect them to take a couple of deep shots, and that's where A.J. Brown will really come in. Hurts probably runs more than we expect this weekend, too, I think. And I kind of expect Philadelphia to do to the Giants a little of what Tampa Bay did to Philadelphia last year, which is really shut down the mobility of their quarterback, force him to make throws from the pocket, read the defense. I don't think Daniel Jones can do it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
Our next game is the one that I still haven't made a pick for, Jimmy. I just picked the over. Buffalo is hosting the Cincinnati Bengals. They are 5.5-point favorites. The over-under is 49. Plus 202 on the money line for Cincinnati, minus 240 for Buffalo. And I keep going back and forth for a number of reasons. The first thing that comes to mind is Cincinnati's offensive line is totally banged up, but that didn't matter last year, which was very odd. On Buffalo's side, it's the defense hasn't been the same without Von Miller. He seems to be a guy that makes a big difference for teams on the defensive side of the football in these elite games, and not having him hurts. And I don't know what the fuck Josh Allen's going to do, man. He tried to single-handedly give that game away last week.
I think you know what he's going to do. He's going to continue to be Brett Favre. He's going to throw passes when he shouldn't. He's going to check out of runs to throw passes. He's going to probably throw an interception. He's probably not going to look great in the red zone, and then he's going to do some things that make you go, holy shit, I can't believe that man did that. So, because of the offensive line problems for the Bengals, I'm going to take the Bills. I feel like 5.5 either way is a horrible number. Like, I really do. But because I'm teasing Kansas City up to 14, I can get some extra points for Buffalo here. And that's the parlays the parlays I'm looking for in the AFC. Because I mean, Burrow didn't look good. Allen didn't look good. These teams both caught some breaks to move on. I don't really know what the hell Harbaugh was doing at the end of that game, but the Bengals say thank you for that, Coach Harbaugh. I just think the offensive line problems are going to be too much for Cincinnati to overcome because Buffalo does have a good defense without Von Miller. Not as good, but I think they're still good. I do think they still have playmakers. And Burrow, we know Burrow will throw some balls where he shouldn't either, and that's where Buffalo's ball hawks can come in and flip the field, flip a quarter, something like that. So I do think Buffalo's gonna steal this win.
I'm not betting anything at the team level for this game. I think these two teams are very evenly matched. If I was going to bet it, I would probably take Cincinnati with the points. I think 5.5 is a little too much. I think Buffalo is just, they've been hyped all year, and I think they get a little extra action. I do like the over because I think there's going to be a lot of points, and because of that, I like both Allen and Burrow props, like pretty much across the board. I think you're probably going to see a pick or two from each of them, but I think you're going to get at least 2 touchdowns, 250, maybe more. Allen he'll probably break out a couple of bigger runs. So see what you can get out there on the lines. Maybe he puts up one of those games where he puts up 55 yards rushing. See what kind of odds you can get for over 50 yards rushing on Allen. Probably pretty good right now. This is going to be a fun game to watch. Cincinnati just kind of has this horseshoe up their ass, man. They kind of remind me of those Pittsburgh teams of the past where they just seem to get a couple of good bounces here and there. That ridiculous Huntley fumble return touchdown reminded me a lot of the Super Bowl that Pittsburgh had against Arizona, where they had the interception that was ran back. That was a game. That was obviously at the end of the half, not the end of the game. But Cincinnati just shouldn't be doing what they're doing, but they keep doing it, and I don't understand why. Because neither of one of us like their coach, so I guess we just have to say it's Joe Burrow and those receivers.
Yeah, I think that's and
fair. A pretty good defense.
But the thing, a pretty good defense. But the thing that Cincinnati,
pretty good, not great.
Pretty good, not great. They haven't lost a game since that monstrosity they played against the Browns. But I think that's probably my problem with the Bengals is when they have a quarter or a half where they don't play well, like they look really bad.
That's a good point.
When Burrow has a little rough couple drives, I think that's where you see the coaching deficiencies of Zach Taylor.
But I think that's why I like not betting the game, betting the Allen and Burrow props, because if Cincinnati shits the bed for a half and Buffalo runs up on them, that means you're going to get more passes. They're going to have more room to throw, so you'll get more stuff from Burrow. And if Buffalo's putting it on them, Allen's going to be the engine that drives that bus. So that's why I like the quarterback props there. Probably look at some of the receiver props too. Diggs and Davis are going to eat for Buffalo. Higgins and Jamar Chase are going to eat for Cincinnati. That's something I talked about it in our Browns recap, is putting the ball in the hands of your best players in the biggest moments and in the biggest games. And that's something these two teams do. And we talk about how the Browns don't do it. These teams do. Another team that does a great job of just putting the ball in the hands of its great players is San Francisco, and they're the Sunday night affair. The NFL probably saw the idea of San Francisco and Dallas playing, and they're like, oh yeah, that's gonna be Sunday night, baby, prime time. San Francisco is hosting Dallas. The Niners are 4-point favorites. 46.5 is the over/under. Plus 165 for Dallas. Minus 200 for the Niners. This is another one of those that I don't think people should be getting too excited about what Dallas looked like in week 1. That Tampa Bay team was everything we thought they were, but we didn't want to believe it because we let the Tom Brady mystique fool us. Tampa very one-dimensional. They can't run the football, which means Dallas could tee off, just rushing the passer. They ain't going to get that from San Francisco, man. San Francisco's going to hit them from all over the place. I've been on San Francisco to just keep rolling. Jimmy, what say you as the Cowboys and the Niners face off once again in the NFC playoffs?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference for Dallas would be that, what Tampa Bay did offensively wasn't really a surprise. Tampa's defense surprised me. Like, I expected Tampa's defense to play a better game. That surprised me. The way Dallas was moving the ball against Tampa Bay will not work against this San Francisco defense. It just won't. I think San Francisco, in my opinion, even with Brock Purdy, I believe San Francisco is the superior talented team here. And I think the Niners win this game by probably 10 points. Like, I think San Francisco, I'm sure Dallas will keep it close at times. They'll probably have to run the ball more than passing.
But I don't think San Francisco's going to let them run the ball. I think San Francisco's going to just shut that down with their base defense, and then they're just going to go after Prescott and force him into mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, I think they'll try to establish the run. I don't really know if it'll work, but I think they'll have to try to establish it. But I just think San Francisco is just a much better team than Dallas. I really believe
pretty
that.
Much across the board. They've been on such a tear lately. And I like them. I'm going to be teasing them and all kinds of stuff. I've been enjoying the Brock Purdy bets lately. I hit on one last week with him with one of my free bets. That was a lot of fun. He's money for over 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. And they're going to, last week that paid out plus 350.
Nice.
So if that's what they're going to do, then I'm going to take it. And I'm going to keep taking it. I don't know if Purdy lights it up again, but at some point he is what he is. And what he is a pretty good quarterback that seems to run this offense better than we've seen anybody else run it.
Yeah, but he also doesn't have to light it up to throw a 2-yard screen to McCaffrey or Debo.
No.
And then there's 100 passing yards right there. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he's doing exactly what he's being asked to do.
But he's finding those guys in that 10 to 20 yard range when they're there, and that's enough to open up those running lanes for this team that just Shanahan just schemes so well. They come up with all kinds of plays, and just like I said about the last two teams, they find ways to get their best guys the ball in space and let them do what they do best.
Yeah, I imagine early on, my guess so we've been big fans of Kyle Shanahan for a long time, even with what happened in the Super Bowl. What I expect to see early, I think you're going to see a lot of boots and screens right at Micah Parsons. That's what I think they're going to do. I think that's how you're going to get him to stop blitzing. If you're going to keep sending him off the corner, I'm going to run George Kittle right behind you, and there's going to be nobody there to tackle him when he gets the ball. I think that's how you get Micah to stop all the blitzes. And then I think Debo is bound to burn Diggs on a double move somewhere along the line. So,
what do you think about George Kittle in this game? Do you think the middle could open up if they're struggling? They got to bring everybody up that can open things up across the middle. If they got to stop the run, they got to bring in an extra linebacker, which means now you got to cover Kittle with a linebacker. That's usually not a recipe for success. Do you think Kittle can kind of break out? Because he hasn't really been the beast we expect him to be. He's making the big plays when they need him, but they really haven't fed him like Kansas City generally feeds Kelsey.
Yeah, for me personally, I'm just going to lean towards McCaffrey and Debo on the player props because last week it almost looked like the offense evolved again for San Francisco. There were like routes where we had been seeing Kittle at like 6 to 8 yards. They went like 12 to 15 to Ayuk instead. Yeah. It looked like they took everything like one more route tree deeper. So I'm not really sure where Kittle's going to fit in. So I feel more confident in Debo and McCaffrey.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's good advice. Any final thoughts on this weekend? It looks like we're both mostly on the same page. I don't know who's going to win that Buffalo-Cincinnati game. I think it's going to be a field goal game. I wouldn't be surprised if either one of those teams win, but I'm big on Kansas City, Philadelphia, and San Francisco this weekend. You're in agreement with 3 of those, with Buffalo being the outlier there for us.
Yeah, and like I said, the only reason I'm taking Buffalo is because of the offensive line injuries for Cincinnati. I mean, Joe Burrow gets beat up when he's got a healthy offensive line, so I'm not sure what that's going to look like, but I agree with you. I don't think the games this weekend are going to be as close as they were last weekend, in my opinion. I think you've got probably right now the 3 best teams in the NFL all hosting a playoff game. And I think they're going to do what you're supposed to do when you host a playoff game. I think they're going to dominate and move on to the next round.
That wraps us up for the NFL Divisional Round, but we do have Browns news to talk about. Jimmy, the Cleveland Browns have themselves a new defensive coordinator. His name is Jim Schwartz. He has been around the league for a long time, and he's coached a lot of defenses, including the Philadelphia Eagles when they won the Super Bowl. He's a really good defensive coordinator. I think they got it right. They found a really good coach to be their defensive coordinator. The questions that I have aren't about Jim Schwartz's ability to coach. It's about Barry's ability to give him players that fit the needs on this roster for him to coach. How much I'm hearing a lot of people talk about Schwartz getting more out of this team. How much more do you think there is to get out of the roster, like from what they have right now? How much more do you think there is to squeeze out of that without making any improvements?
Well, most people think the Browns defense has more talent than we think it does. So I'm curious with John Johnson out of the secondary room. I'm curious to see what Jim Schwartz can do with the defense. I definitely, I think one thing I'll say for Schwartz, I don't think we'll see the lack of effort. I don't think you'll see the lack of hustle because I think Schwartz will make it very known very early that that's the way to get yourself on the bench. Like, I believe that. Like, I really believe that about Jim Schwartz.
Yeah, but will it be for a play or just a series, or
right.
is it going to be a man's punishment, or are we going to play childhood games?
Right.
I can't imagine Schwartz being the type of guy that would be like, all right, sit down for a play.
Yeah, no, but I think Schwartz will. I think they will have a defined identity. I think one thing like.
Well, that's something they haven't had under Joe Woods really at all.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it a lot. I didn't really talk about it much this year because I don't really think the scheme was as much of a problem as the players this year. But last year, we talked about it. We had a big problem with, Joe Woods didn't run a set defense.
Yeah.
Like Joe Woods tried to make a new scheme every week to match up base with the team he was playing. And I don't think that's going to work in the NFL. It clearly didn't work for Joe Woods. And we know that won't be Schwartz. We know the defense will have an identity. I believe, in my opinion, just knowing what the defenses Schwartz has coached look like, I believe a defensive tackle will be on the way, either through free agency or draft. I think he probably made that very clear to Andrew Berry. That, dude, you got to give me somebody to plug up the middle, man. I can't do anything else if I got to move all my resources to the middle of the defense to stop the run, then we got problems on the edge. So, but I do think they'll have an identity. I think there'll be more hustle, and I think it will be good for them to have a coach that is going to earn respect day one in the door.
Yeah,
I mean, clearly Joe Woods didn't have the respect of the team.
No.
And Schwartz is going to have that from day one. Like, I don't think, like, Myles Garrett isn't going to be treated differently than any other D lineman.
I mean, I would hope, because it feels like Myles Garrett gets the kid's glove treatment, and we see how that works for the teams that Russell Wilson has been on lately.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't think you'll get that from Schwartz. I think you will see a different attitude, I hope, and a different energy level from the defense.
Also hear a lot of people say that they like that Schwartz plays a lot of man coverage, which I think plays into the roster that they have better. I would like to see him challenge Ward, Newsome, and Emerson is it really came on last year. We'll see how he plays in his second year. Hopefully he can avoid a second year slump. I think that secondary needs to be challenged, and I think that if you get the right coach in there to challenge them, I think you can get the best out of them, and I don't think that was Joe Woods. Because we would see them flash at times, especially against some of the better teams. Like the way they take it personally when they go up against Cincinnati. They know that's a great receiving core, and they want to go out there and prove that they can shut them down. And I think Jim Schwartz is the type of coach that if he can't get them to go out there and play like that every week with that kind of intensity, then I don't know who you're going to find to do it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. So I think that's good. I love that. Bill Callahan, there were some teams wanted to interview him for offensive coordinator, and he chose to stay put. So I love that. We know we love Bill Callahan and Stump Mitchell and the work they do with the offensive line and the running game. So hopefully the staff rounds into form and get a little bit better performance on that defensive side of the ball.
All right, well, Jimmy, you got something you want to bring up? Why don't you bring it up?
So I understand the goal to play in professional sports is to win a championship.
Yes.
But to win the championship, you have to make the tournament that leads to the championship.
Yes.
So if you were the GM of a team and you had a quarterback that could literally every year get you to the tournament but never get you to the championship, how do you go about changing that for your team?
Man, I guess you just have to start with the quarterback position because that's usually... I think that's what we've seen the last 2 years in the NFL has made the league really interesting because we have these great quarterbacks, but there are also some teams that have deficiencies, we would say, at the quarterback position. I mean, Brock Purdy doesn't have a great arm. Jalen Hurts has limitations in the passing game, but those rosters built around them are so good. And styles make fights, as they say in boxing and MMA. And when you get a team, when you have a team that is better overall in, say, the San Francisco 49ers, and teams with quarterbacks that maybe the rest of the roster isn't quite as good as what San Francisco has in Buffalo, Cincinnati, and Kansas City. And it just sets up these really interesting matchups. And that's the teams that don't have the quarterback went out and got receiving weapons. And we've seen Mahomes make receivers look better. They let Tyreek Hill go, and I think that's why Patrick Mahomes is at the top of the mountain right now because he's doing it with he's still doing it. He didn't regress. He lost Tyreek Hill. They replaced him with just Valdez Scantling.
Couple guys.
Yeah, I mean it was mostly Valdez Scantling running a lot of those routes, but they just kind of changed what they did offensively, and he's good enough to make it work. Man, I guess it just depends who your quarterback is. And I said last offseason I would have rode out this season with Baker and improved the roster in other places and really looked at adding another receiving weapon, if not two. I look at the Browns. I'm guessing this is a question about the Browns.
Well, it was a question about the Browns and about the Vikings.
Oh. Wow. I guess those two teams aren't as dissimilar as I would think at first.
They're not.
At first glance, because Minnesota's defense is a problem. And
but
I mean, I would say,
but just like the Browns, there's first and second round draft picks all over that defense.
And they have Jefferson, who I think is better than any offensive player the Browns have. No offense to Nick Chubb, but Jefferson affects games in ways that Nick Chubb just doesn't. I don't think that's Nick Chubb's fault. I don't think the coaching staff allows him to do the types of things that Jefferson gets to do in terms of impacting the game. But, wow. I mean, Browns fans would immediately say Deshaun Watson's better than Kirk Cousins, but his playoff resume isn't... I mean, his win-loss record isn't anything spectacular in the playoffs. It's not as bad as Kirk Cousins, and I don't know... I mean, that's the biggest question mark heading into the next season is what does Deshaun Watson look like on the field? Is he going the Russell Wilson route where he's just not going to be able to adjust to what defenses are doing? I don't know. It all hinges. I mean, to answer your question, I don't know what Minnesota does. They obviously have to upgrade at quarterback, but who's that guy?
That's the thing. Like,
how do you do that?
As a front office, like, that is a hell of a spot to be in. Like, you know, we were on the Rams from the jump when they upgraded from Goff to Stafford with the weapons they had on both sides of the ball.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know what the Vikings do because now you've got all this evidence that at best Kirk Cousins could get you one playoff win a year at best. He's not going to beat a better team, but you're going to go to the playoffs every year, and then who the hell knows what might happen? But where's the up? Like, who is out there that you go, he's going to make our team better?
The only guys that are even remotely available, like, I guess Tom Brady's available, but I don't know if he really elevates what they do in Minnesota.
Time for Rodgers to take the true Favre path, go play in Minnesota.
Well, he'd have to stop in the Jets for a year in between. That'd be pretty wild. I mean, maybe Lamar Jackson. Maybe they look at Lamar. I mean, I would think that's at least a different quarterback, and you can do different things with him there. But I don't know.
And Cousins feels like a Harbaugh guy.
But I don't. But if you're Baltimore and you're going to trade Lamar. You're going to trade Lamar for Kirk Cousins and a couple of draft picks? Like, you're going to go into next season with the weapons that they have and Kirk Cousins is your quarterback and try and make a real run in the AFC? Like, do we have to list all the quarterbacks again that you're going to be behind? Because he's right there with Derek Carr. He's going to be like the 8th or 9th best quarterback in the conference at best.
Oh, I don't disagree with you, but it really, all reports feel like they're not going to pay Lamar. So you got to do something.
Wow. That's all just super interesting, and we'll have to see how it shakes out in the offseason. I just don't know what those teams do. Like, I was perfectly prepared to give Baker $35 million a year and then just load up on weapons around him and take the San Francisco route and hope that you could, put together a team that's good enough to get by the gauntlet of quarterbacks because, like, all right, you traded 3 first-round draft picks, but I don't think you have a guy that's better than the top guys in the AFC anyway.
No, I agree.
And you don't have the weapons.
And I still think prime Deshaun Watson is still probably the 3rd or 4th best quarterback in the AFC right now. And I think those other rosters are still better than the Browns roster. So,
yeah, that's the problem the Browns are going to be facing. And that's the problem I think Minnesota faces. They've got some talent, but like their defense is rubbish, man. They're nowhere near what Philadelphia and San Francisco are bringing to the table. Well, we'll wrap everything up right there. Jimmy, thank you for making the drive up to record in person, man. It's a lot of fun we get to do this.
Always is, man. No place I'd rather be, brother.
And we want to thank all of you for listening. Please drop a like or subscribe so that you can get the latest podcasts as they come up. We'll have everything next week for the AFC and NFC championship games. And, of course, in a couple of weeks, we'll have the full rundown of Super Bowl bets. It gets a little wild. We got a Rihanna halftime show. I don't bet any of those, but it's fun to look at the props. I don't think we got a single one of our halftime show Super Bowl bets right last year for the rap show. I think we were like almost wrong across the board.
No, I think I hit the opening song.
Did you hit the opening song? You hit the Gatorade too. I
hit
that's
the
not
Gatorade.
A halftime
yeah,
show.
I hit the Gatorade in the opening song. So,
all right. So watch out for those as we come in. Get your bets in this weekend. Just another reminder that if you haven't signed up, there's still plenty of free money out there. FanDuel and Bet365 still have $200. So does DraftKings. So does Caesars and BetMGM. And all of the other places that you can find. What's the code again there? What's the place they can go to on 92.3, Jimmy?
BetQL.com.
BetQL.com. Check that out. Get yourself some free money. They're giving it away. You may as well gamble with their money instead of yours. That way, if you lose, you don't really lose. And with that public service announcement in the books, for Jimmy Champ, I am Evan Belfiore, and we are no broken legs.